Hi, I'm Katrina, and this is Boldly Challenging Ableism. I'm your host, Katrina Simons. I'm the Community Program Specialist at the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. This program explores various topics that impact people with disabilities in our community. Each episode addresses a different aspect of our society within the context of ableism. Ableism is the prejudice that stems from the belief or belief system that assumes someone is less capable or less worthy because of a real or perceived difference in ability or function. On this program, we hope to answer some questions you may have been afraid to ask, or maybe some you didn't even know you had. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Boldly podcast. Our guest today is Chris Farrell from Minnesota Public Radio and Marketplace on National Public Radio. We're going to talk today about money and disability and some of the limits that people with disabilities face. So we're really excited for this episode. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work and your life?
Sure. I'm a journalist and an author, and like many people, it was not a straight line to where I am now. When I graduated from college, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, and so I became a merchant seaman for 4 years and sailed the seas, went through the Middle East, out to Asia, around the coast of the U.S., through the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal. I did that for 4 years, and I took my savings and went to London School of Economics and got my master's degree, because I thought I might want to be an academic and decided I didn't and decided I want to become a journalist.
Okay.
And so I moved to New York and pounded the pavement for about a year and, finally broke in. And I was working at Business Week. And on the weekends, I was working for Minnesota Public Radio, a nationally syndicated program called Sound Money, which was dealing with personal finances. And then decided I wanted to do more radio and some other mediums. So I moved here to the Twin Cities, continued to write for Business Week until 2017, but got to do more radio, got to do some public television, and do a variety of other activities in the journalistic and in writing sphere.
When you worked for Business Week, that's not in Minnesota, right?
No, that is in New York City. It was headquartered in New York City.
So like the one when you go to like the doctor's office or the eye doctor, you might see it on the table there.
That's right.
Business Week.
That Business Week.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But you also work for MPR at the same time.
At the same time, on the weekends.
Oh, so were you flying back and forth then?
No, we just work out of various studios, just like we're in the studio here in New York, be connected to Minnesota. The first studio that I had, which was up on 11th Avenue, and it was just, if I remember right, a red brick building. It had a door, no windows, and you go in and had the biggest, the largest console that I've ever seen, and they were mixing one of the Rolling Stones albums. They were really high end, and they had this little room for me to go in, do the broadcast, and then leave. While they actually made some money, mixing albums and various music. So it was always kind of fun where I was, what studios I'd be going to.
Were the Rolling Stones there?
They weren't there, but they had done all the recordings, and they were pulling it into an album.
What is your connection to the disability community or intellectual and developmental disability?
So my connection has been as a journalist over the years, where I've done a lot in personal finance and in policy and in economics. So it's never been an area of focus, but I have done a number of stories over the years. And then I have a personal connection with my nephew who has cerebral palsy. And so it's always been an interest of mine. And in the various mediums, whether it's public radio or public television or writing for various publications like PBS Next Avenue, the online magazine targeted at the 50-plus demographic, it's always been an interest of mine.
Like the AARP publication?
It's a competitor to it.
Oh, okay. And what do you find unique about the disability community when it comes to money?
Well, I think there's some enormous challenges that a lot of us don't really appreciate in terms of how important are the benefits, like having Medicaid, for example, and yet all the restrictions about how little that you can earn while you're on your benefits, or you can lose your benefits. And so I think the personal finances are really complicated, very difficult, very challenging. And I think a lot of us don't realize that. maybe we have a sense of that. But I think once you start diving into it, I remember when we had a conversation several years ago and you were going into some of the details and I wasn't aware of these details, and it was incredibly important. And it was a great education for me. I mean, I really loved it because you really do know what you're talking about. But I think to the typical person, they're not going to be aware of these twists, these turns, these traps that are out there.
Well, and I think sometimes when you find them, it's too late.
Well, this is true.
Because you got stuck in them. And when did you first find out about the Social Security income limits, and were you surprised?
Well, I first found it because of my nephew, who is now in his early 30s. And so I knew about it. I was surprised.
Okay.
That it's so little. He works as a janitor, and he loves his job. He's great at his job. It's wonderful, but obviously there are earning restrictions. And so I've been aware of that and have written about that a number of times, hoping to raise it, actually. I mean, that would be my desire. That was often the goal of my writings.
Yeah. And does your nephew does not live local, if I recall?
No, he lives in Washington, D.C.
And does your sister help him manage his his finances and things like that?
Yes.
Okay. And does she feel that she has access to the right information?
She was very disciplined, very research-oriented, very much his advocate. So she's a remarkable resource. But it was a lot of work, as you know, and a lot of really getting the information, really talking to people, understanding everything. And so, no, she's done an absolutely magnificent job.
And she somehow was able to find that information.
Yes.
It wasn't like she didn't know and then one day he lost all his benefits.
No.
Okay,
no.
because that is something that happens to people sometimes.
No, that's not happened.
Okay, and have you heard of Able accounts?
Yes. So Able accounts is a really important development. The law, I believe, became effective in 2016. For people who aren't aware, it's almost like a 529 college savings plan because it's somewhat modeled after that. And different states have slightly different rules, regulations, but it was the federal government. And it allows for, because of this $2,000 earnings restriction that's out there, it allows for parents, grandparents, friends, relatives, anybody who cares, have an account that can pay for qualified expenses. And there's a whole list of what those qualified expenses are that can improve their quality of their life without
penalizing them.
Without penalizing them and being at risk of losing their benefits. So I'm a big fan of the Able accounts. Right now, you have to have been diagnosed when you're 26 and under, and that changes in January of 2026 to 46 and under. And that will be a big change, and I hope that will open it up to more people. But my main piece of advice there is you really do want expert advice, whether it's a personal financial planner that's very knowledgeable about it, or a lawyer who's very knowledgeable about it, or somebody in the broader community who's very knowledgeable about it, because you don't want to make a mistake. Then there is some nuances, and every state's slightly different, and you can participate in an Able account in different states.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in your own state. Like with the 529 plan, if you decide, I like the way they're doing it in Michigan, you can participate in the Michigan plan rather than the Minnesota plan. So again, it's one of those things you do want to research, you do want to be careful, but I think it should be on your radar screen.
I have a friend who has significant needs, and her state actually doesn't have Able accounts, but they allow them to go to other states. So then she has to pick which other state she wants to go to, and she's confused about that because banking rules are different in different states, and I think that's something that a lot of people are struggling with.
That's right. So this is where you're going to need help. You're going to need to take your time. You're going to need to research it, draw on your community to help you do this. But it is worth investigating. And I think for probably most people, it's worth having one.
Yes. I think there are some very rare occasions where it isn't worth having one, but I think they're pretty rare.
Yeah.
I'm told. I'm certainly not an expert with money, but I try to keep up on the money as it relates to disability for obvious reasons. But I wouldn't say I'm in no way a financial planner, and I sometimes feel like I can just barely count change. But I can.
You can.
I can do it.
Absolutely.
Have you ever reached out to like a financial planner or a lawyer about an Able account?
Yes. Well, I did a story at a public television show called Right on the Money.
Okay.
And I believe we went to Virginia, and it was a financial planner who had, I believe, a disabled son.
Okay.
And he had carved out a niche.
Okay.
Working with families with developmentally challenged children. And so it was a wonderful interview. He was a strong advocate for able accounts. And he also talked a little bit about special needs trusts. But again, the main message that he gave to us was about, the need to be tap into somebody who actually really understands, particularly with the trusts, understands how they work. But these vehicles are out there. And so that was the one story that focused specifically on able accounts and the trust, but mainly we talked about able accounts.
And did he have suggestions for how families should find an expert to consult with?
Yes, and it was the way that you find any expert, which is, for one, you reach out to the people you know, and more than likely you're tied into your local community, your local ecosystem of people who have the same question you do. And so you just start asking around, you reach out to the organizations that you may be working with in a different context, but they may also have information about, well, you might want to talk to so-and-so, or this person has developed an expertise. And then it's very hard to always say when you're dealing with a financial expert, is this someone you should go to or not? I mean, part of it is very personal. Some people will drive you crazy in 5 minutes, and you're just not going to want to work with them.
Right.
Other people you respond to, there's an empathy there, but you also want to find out, how are you paid? How much are you going to get paid? All those basic fundamental questions that you have in any kind of professional relationship.
Do you worry at all about people with disabilities not having access to that expert planning?
Yes.
Okay.
I really do.
Okay.
I really do.
Good, because I was worried too, but then I was like, maybe I'm worried unnecessarily, because worrying is one of the things that I'm the best at.
No, I mean, it's sad to say, it is commentary on our society, but when people are vulnerable and they're dealing with complex situations, they can get taken advantage of. And so that's where I just think it's so important for people to draw on their community, of the community of people that they trust and who love them, and that those people will do some of the extra work that needs to be done to vet who's the professional, what's this kind of relationship going to be, does this person really understand your circumstances, and is this somebody you really want to work with?
You've done a lot on money and finance for many, many years. What is the best piece of advice you can give people about managing their own money?
So that's a good one. So there'd be a couple things.
Okay.
I don't have just one.
Okay.
But a couple things. One would be, time is your most precious resource.
Okay.
So when you're thinking about money, you want to automate as much as possible. So the money's going automatically from your paycheck into a savings account, or however, to pay various bills, because you want to limit the amount of time that you have to focus on this.
Okay.
There's some people who enjoy that. Now, and I actually do know some people who, the joy of their life is sitting down with an Excel spreadsheet and, dealing with the numbers. Let's put that person aside.
That's
okay?
not most people.
That's not most people. Time is your most precious commodity. So you want to automate as much as possible. You want to keep it as simple as much as possible. And then the other thing is a classic phrase in the world of finance, personal finance, economics, a margin of safety. Okay. And what a margin of safety means that, if you have a setback, you're not looking at catastrophe. It's a setback. Setbacks are never fun. Setbacks are never enjoyable to deal with. But you have built yourself up a safety net so that you may hurt, but you're not in a catastrophic situation. But the other part of a margin of safety is a more optimistic look, is that if some opportunity comes along, you have some resources to tap, that you can take advantage of this opportunity. You can walk through that door. So, that's those are two things. Keep it simple and just automate as much as possible, and always have that mindset of a margin of safety, because unfortunately, things happen. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And you want, on the one, not to end up in a really terrible financial situation. On the other, you want to be able to take advantage of an opportunity. You want to be able to, to deal with that.
I'm curious if you think a $2,000 asset limit, which is the current asset limit if you are receiving Medicaid services, is enough to have a margin of safety.
No. I mean, having said what I just said, that's the right comeback. It's not. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think it needs to be changed. It's one of the reasons why Able accounts exists. People realize it, but this is how sort of in a way got around that. No, and I think it's one of the things I've written about. It's something that I've talked about, that's just way too low. It's just way too low. And considering about inflation, there's this period of inflation that we've been going through. $2,000 is worth a lot less right now when we're talking in November of 2024 than it was than it was back in November of 2019. So, yes, I do think it needs to be. I would love to see it raised.
The current asset limits are based off of a formula that was made in 1982. Why do you think it's taken so long for people to realize that that's not sufficient?
I have no really good idea, except for that there's so many cross currents going on that it ends up, and this is wrong, but it ends up not becoming enough of a priority. I mean, the Able accounts was a priority of some people, and they made that happen. Medicaid is so difficult to change, and Medicaid is such a controversial program in so many ways. I mean, for example, one of the problems with Medicaid is that home health care workers, very low paid, a lot of turnover, and people are really aware this is a big problem, but there are the Medicaid limits on how much they're going to be paid or what their reimbursement rate is going to be. And there's been a widespread acknowledgement that this needs to change, but it has not been made a priority.
Thank you. I also agree with that. You recently edited an issue of our magazine that's called Impact here at ICI, and it was about IDD, so intellectual and developmental disabilities, and retirement. What are your concerns about retirement and finances? And you can go to both people without disabilities and people with disabilities.
So that was a wonderful experience, being the guest editor for that magazine. I mean, I really enjoyed that.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yes, that was incredible. I think one of the things that is vastly misunderstood or not known is that people with disabilities are living longer. And so now retirement is an important topic. And I don't think your public policy mindset, I don't think a lot of your individual mindset is thinking about retirement in the traditional sense, but it's real.
Yeah.
And that's what I took away from that experience. So then you kind of get to all the fundamental basics about as you get older, you want to have purpose. You want to have community. You want to have connection. Those two things are incredibly important to the quality of life. And then you want to have the financial resources. And so, as we were just talking about, $2,000, that's not enough. And, making sure that people, are engaged in their community, that they're part of the community, that, they're, I know some of the interviews that I did that, they're going with other peers who may or may not be disabled, but they're there and they're making connections and they're part of the community and they're engaged in activities. It's incredibly important. Those two, having a purpose, having connections, and, having an adequate standard of living. Those three things are important. And I think for a lot of people, they're unprepared.
You've done a lot of work around equity and finance, not just with people with disabilities, with lots of different communities. What is one thing you can tell us that might be surprising to the audience?
So I think the one thing that might be really surprising to the audience when it comes to equity and disability, personal finances, is the starting point when you're thinking about the community is that people want to work. And that is your starting point. We have this in the broader society, we always assume people don't want to work, and then you have to create incentives for them to work. And I think from, the stories that I've done, the research that I've done, the personal experiences that I'm aware of, the conversations that I've had, your starting point is that people want to work. And therefore, the starting point then, or the second point is, you then want to think about ways that people can go to work or work can come to them, that they can participate in work activities, that they can earn more money. But also, we always talk about work in terms of money, but work is also a community. And that's where you make connections, and people care whether you show up, and people gossip, and there are people you like and there are people you don't like. It's a community, but you're part of that community, and that's what work really does. And you feel that you are contributing, because at a core, we all want to be useful. That's a primary motivation that everyone feels. And so there was a very sad story that was told to me by a gentleman. And he has a company, and it works with people with disabilities, and business was down, and he had to let people go, saying, when we got our contracts or, business picked up, I'm going to call you. And he was aware that people were sitting by the phone waiting for that phone call. And so you don't want people waiting for our phone call.
Right.
But that's what too many people are doing. They want to be in the workforce. They want to be participating. They want to be contributing. They want to be useful and make some money.
So you have done more work than most people I know around people with disabilities and working. And it seems to me that there seems to be this attitude that people who need things like Medicaid and people who need things like benefits are lazy. Have you found that?
I found two. That's one of them. So that's one of them. Or it would be terrible to ask them to work because they're disabled, and that oh no, you can't ask them to go to work. And so they're both there. The notion of, well, you get all these benefits and you're not working, and so yeah, right, yeah, no. But the other one that has always struck me is sort of this, we shouldn't ask people.
The charity model. The
charity model. And the lazy one is just, stupid. I mean, there's no other word that I can use. But I also think that the charity model is deeply wrong. Again, in my experience, people want to work because they want what we all want. We all want connection. We all want purpose. We all want to be useful. We all want to make money, to be as independent as possible. Now, there are limitations about what can be done, but that doesn't mean we can't make accommodations because people have things to offer in the workplace. And so the lazy, I reject. The charitable mindset, I also reject.
Okay. What changes would you like to see happen for people with disabilities when it comes to money and finance?
What I really want to see is a shift toward, you know what? Let's start with the premise that everybody wants to work. That is our starting point. And then how do we work with corporations? How do we work with organizations to create some incentives for them to do hiring? And then we just, as we just mentioned several times, you have to raise how much can be earned. You have to raise how much can be saved. And, you can have a debate. I don't feel I have an expertise to say what those numbers are, but I do feel very strongly that those numbers need to be a lot higher.
There's a bill that I think is from last session that did not pass, and it was going to raise the individual income limit to $10,000 and the couple income limit to $20,000.
And that's a good starting place. And then can it even be increased more depending on how things are structured? And there are people who do think deeply about that. But let's start from this place of we have a low unemployment rate nationally. Let's lower the unemployment rate dramatically of people who are disabled. And my suspicion is with an effort and will, you would lower that unemployment rate dramatically.
Do you see that happening in the near future?
I do think so, but I'm an incurable optimist, all right? But it's going to take a long time. But my hope is there are enough good people out there who are aware of good people who are disabled and want to work and want to contribute, and that this is a worthwhile political and legislative effort to make to bring about changes, because everybody benefits from this change. Everybody. And so, yes, I'm hoping that there's enough people of goodwill that this happens within a reasonable time frame.
Well, that's a lot of optimism for a Monday.
It is.
Way to
yes,
go.
it is.
Way to go. I love it. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Boldly today. We hope that you have a good rest of your day, whatever you're doing.
Boldly Challenging Ableism is a co-production of AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. For more information, please visit ici.umn.edu.